Hi. Hi there. I'm Brian Schiffman, the President and CEO of the Vaughan Chamber of Commerce, and I want to welcome you all from your homes to our virtual town hall today. I want to thank you for joining us at this incredibly difficult time for all of you. We have been hearing your concerns, your anxiety, and what you're doing that's positive to stay focused and stay with your family at this time. At the Chamber, we're a membership organization. We've spoken to over 300 of our members in the last few days. So we are hearing concerns about how do I deal with my employees? I have a acute liquidity crunch problem. I have a problem with rent. So we are hearing those. We've been working with all levels of government to communicate those concerns at all levels of chambers across Canada. We're doing that. And we have seen some positive developments from levels of government. So today we're here to talk about some of those supports that are being provided and get some more details to help people at home get clarity on how those benefits can apply to them. I know that there's a lot of noise that's happening out there. One thing I don't want you to have to do is spend time at home going through Google to figure out what is the newest CRA policy, what's the newest benefit at the province. So at the Chamber, you'll see on our website, I believe it's on your screen now, you'll see on the homepage, there's a scrolling banner at the very top. It says COVID-19 business supports. You should click that often. It takes you a business supports page that shows you all the programs being provided by all levels of government. Go there often because then it's one source of information that's pretty much real time so that you have it all in one place. Again, we're communicating your thoughts and concerns with government. I did want to say that the governments clearly are working closely together. We've seen some positive developments in that way. Today, we're going to see if we can go a little further in some areas as well. Please feel free to get in touch with the Chamber should you need us. Now, last message, and I'm going to introduce our speakers. We will get through this together. I know it's an incredible, difficult time, but we will get through this together. We are united. It's not going to be a V-shaped recovery. It'll be a gradual recovery, and but we're there for each other, and let's continue to be that way. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce all three of our speakers, and then I'm going to go directly to MP Sorbara. He's going to talk for about 5 minutes, followed by the other two speakers, and then we're going to do some Q&A for about 2 minutes each with questions that our membership has pre-submitted, and some of it's coming online right now on Facebook Live. We're getting your questions. So just introducing all three speakers, and thank you, gentlemen, for joining us today. I do appreciate it. We have MP Francesco Sorbara from Vaughan Woodbridge. He's also the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of National Revenue. We have Minister Michael Tibollo for Vaughan Woodbridge, the Associate Minister of Mental Health and Addictions. And we have the Honourable Mayor Maurizio Bevilacqua from the City of Vaughan. Thank you all for joining us. And let's go right to MP Sorbara for an update on the federal government supports for business.
Thank you, Brian. Good morning, Honourable Mayor, Your Worship. Good morning, Minister Tibollo. Good morning to all the members of the very robust and entrepreneurial Vaughan Chamber of Commerce. Thank you for organizing this at this most extraordinary and unique time in our modern history, in the world's modern history, I would say. I want to get right to the point, right into the nitty-gritty about the programs that the federal government is outlining to help businesses, not only here in Vaughan, York Region, across Canada. And I think the best way to go that is, number one, the programs that will most likely apply and assist businesses here in Vaughan are the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy, the Canada Emergency Business Account for your employees, the wage subsidy, and the Canada Emergency Response Benefit, and then the number of deferrals we've put in place. So if I can just take a quick breather on each of them. The Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy, there are some machinations going on in Parliament with regards to that. It is going to be made much more flexible for businesses here in Vaughan that wish to retain their employees. As Brian said, please go to the Vaughan Chamber website for the details. CFIB, go to your accountants. Fazari is doing a great job. Williams and Partners doing a great job. There's lots of resources out there. No business should have to struggle to get the information. If you need even further clarity, direct message me, contact me directly, and I'll help you out as well. What we're trying to do is get money into the hands of Canadian businesses and Canadian workers as quickly as possible. and so forth. On emergency wage subsidy, watch for more details in the next few hours. The comparability periods, which I've been hearing many questions from businesses about, are going to be made much more robust for more businesses to qualify. You'll be covered 75%, $847. If you can pay the additional 25%, you will. We ask you to. If you can't, you don't have to. There is some built-in flexibility. For those businesses asking about rentals, and Brian, you can give me the 5-minute buzzard, please. For those businesses asking about rental payments, the Canada Emergency Business Account, which should be up and running this week via the banks, the funds will be distributed by the banks. That is specifically built in place, 0% interest, no principal repayments until the end of 2022. And if you repay 30,000 of the 40,000, 10,000 is forgiven. So 25% of that loan is a forgivable loan, and it is specifically utilized to pay rent, utilities, lights, etc. So you can use a portion of that forgivable for those to cover those expenses. On the deferral of tax payments, GST, HST, there's a whole listing on the Vaughan Chamber site. We've deferred a lot, literally hundreds of billions of dollars in deferrals for businesses, so they're not in a cash flow crunch. And the final point I want to make is the robustness of the system, especially and specifically at CRA, at the Canada Revenue Agency. We have had over 1.4 million Canadians sign up for the CERB in the last about 60 hours. Those individuals that signed up on Monday morning, many of them being the Vaughan Chamber's employees, have actually received their funds today. Funds are being deposited into people's account, direct deposit. With that, I ask all businesses to please sign up for my business portal account on the Canada Revenue Agency. With that, once the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy is up and running, which it will be soon, those funds will be distributed directly to you within a matter of days. So I ask you that. We are working around the clock. It's a whole of government approach, working with all levels of government and between and amongst all levels of government and with all ministries. I know they're listening. If you have any suggestions, the businesses involved, please reach out to Brian. Brian will pass them on to me. We are taking feedback, and I can say this, I probably send emails to the finance minister and his staff daily on suggestions that we're getting from business here in Vaughan. A lot of them have been taken up. So a lot of the ideas, I thank businesses for that. Brian, how am I doing on time?
You good? 2 minutes.
Oh, wow.
You didn't okay. Yeah.
Okay. No, I just want to make sure we get all the information.
I appreciate that. Yeah.
Okay. On the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy, once the portal opens up, please put your application in. Your reference periods, March, April, May, are being made a lot more flexible. It allows you, our goal is to maintain the attachment between the employer and the employee. So that's a big thing. As of this morning, you've seen Air Canada has made an announcement to rehire 16,000 workers. That announcement was specifically made because of the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy. So you're going to start seeing companies make those announcements where layoffs and furloughs have been announced, that they'll start rehiring people. We hope to see the same thing happen here in the city of Vaughan. We know we have over 12,000 small, medium enterprises of all sizes, all shapes, all products coming here in the city of Vaughan, and we know that many of them can take advantage of the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy. On the deferral sides, please reach out to your accountant. Like I said earlier, you have payment deferral on businesses for their income taxes until literally August 31st, 2020. You have deferrals for GST, HST remittances for GST, HST till June 30th, and you have deferral for custom duties remittances as well. So a lot of programs are put in place. You even have, for the accountants out there, for the first time, the CRA has allowed electronic signatures. I've attended a number of those meetings, the Tax Power Empowerment Center and the group there, a big win for them, but also a big win for your stakeholders. Finally, and I'll stop here, I just want to say thank you. Thank you to Woodbridge Foam, Woodbridge Group, where I was there with the Prime Minister 2.5 years ago and where we made a $20 million investment for the company. Thank you to Ben Machine Products and 3L Westcam. Thank you to Magnotta and Last Straw Distillery. Thank you to TAC, Fieldgate, Paradise Development, every single business that has stood up and contributed to what we are up to. This is not about any single politician or any single person. This is about all of us as Canadians coming together and doing what's right. And what I've seen from business has been an A plus, and I commend you and I applaud you. So Brian, I'll stop there and I'll turn it over to my honorable and esteemed colleagues. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, MP Sorbara. So now we'll turn to Minister Tibollo for an update from the provincial government.
Good morning, Brian. Good morning, gentlemen, Francesco, Maurizio. It's great to be speaking live to the businesses in Vaughan and particularly Woodbridge that we represent. The Ontario government is working tirelessly to make sure that we get this COVID-19 under control as quickly and as effectively as possible. The primary concern for us has been to ensure that we have the supplies in place necessary to be able to have all our emergency rooms and hospitals functioning at peak capacity, as well as all the supports that are necessary to reduce the need for the emergency rooms to be used. As part of that strategy, Francesco alluded to Woodbridge Foam and some of the other businesses that have stepped up to the plate in Vaughan, and I also want to congratulate them and thank them for doing what they've done and creating products almost overnight that would usually take a lot longer to put in place, like the ventilators, the masks, the sanitizers that are being produced here in Woodbridge, and also for all the people that have volunteered and donated. Again, Vaughan is incredible from the standpoint of being always there to ensure that we look after not only ourselves but also the people of the province. So I appreciate all the masks and sanitizers and gloves that I've picked up personally and distributed to other parts of the province, especially like long-term care homes that are in need. The province is also looking, and again, I congratulate Francesco and the federal government for the work that they've done from the standpoint of all the economic stimulus that they're putting forward as part of the strategy to keep us as normalized as possible as an economy, but also to help us minimize the dip that would otherwise have occurred if these stimulants weren't in place. So those are working very, very well with some of the things that we're doing at the provincial level, where we're trying to make life more affordable to the people of the province by doing things like fixing the hydro rate at the lowest rate possible and injecting money into the system to ensure that the electricity that is being consumed, and there's obviously a lot more being consumed when we're telling people to stay in, stay home, work from home, to get the best rates possible. So that's one of the things that we're doing in terms of payment deferrals and what we're trying to do with respect to things like employer health tax and tobacco tax, basically all the taxes that would otherwise be paid at the provincial level. The announcement that we made of the 5 months interest and penalty relief for businesses to file and make payments. That is, again, another thing that we did and that we believe would be of assistance to the people of the province of Ontario. We've created a reserve fund that we think is going to be, it's the largest reserve fund that's ever been created in the history of the province, of $2.5 billion to be utilized for the going forward and ensuring that the economy is able to bounce back as quickly as possible. The investments that we made, the $1.3 billion in contingency, another $1 billion dedicated to COVID-19. We're working to try to make this economically the least detrimental to the overall economy as possible. But we're still fighting a difficult battle in terms of where the curve is going to peak, and then of course we've got to deal with the outcomes. We're losing numerous jobs throughout the province, actually throughout the country. And again, as the Minister responsible for mental health and addictions, one of the things that I'm concerned about is what the fallout will be, not only during this pandemic, but how we deal with the mental stress and anxiety the depression that's going to come about. Businesses are not able to pay their rent. Businesses are closed. We've tried to fine-tune the business essential services for the province. We've gotten a lot of successful, or a lot of people that are happy with what we've done, but we also recognize that we're causing hardship for a lot of people in the economy. But we're prioritizing people's health at this point. the social distancing, the physical distancing, and we want to make sure that people have, are healthy so that we can bounce back when we crest the curve and are able to get back to work.
Thank you, Minister. So, speaking of the new abnormal, I know that I'm at home and I got a 4-year-old running around in the background and keenly listening to what you're saying. I'm also I'm watching updates from my team. So apparently there is an issue with Facebook right now, and there are technical difficulties. But what we're going to do is continue to go forward because we have this whole thing recorded, and we'll put it out immediately after we finish, just to make sure that the business community gets all this information in as real time as we can. This is, I guess, the new technical difficulties that we all experience. Okay, we're going to come back to you after Minister Tibollo. So we'll go to Mr. Mayor. Can you give us an update on what the city's been doing and your plans going forward?
Brian, first of all, let me express to you my sincerest gratitude for putting this together. I think that Francesco, Michael, and I really appreciate this opportunity to connect with the business community. We are very cognizant of the fact that 12,000 businesses in the city of Vaughan create over 225,000 jobs. And as Francesco and as well as Michael have clearly pointed out, not only do they create these jobs, but during this period, they've shown to be exceptional corporate leaders by aiding in the cause to address shortages in masks and other medical supplies, the ability to really retool their companies to address what is right now the priority. For the business community, the message that I have is that the city of Vaughan invests a lot of time and a lot of training in emergency preparedness. And we do that because externalities such as COVID-19 have occurred in the past, and they will also occur in the future. And that is one of the reasons why I applaud both levels of government to recognize that we need to be ready for life after COVID-19, but also what could be another COVID-19 down the road. This has a lot of lessons. I can talk to you about some specific issues. First of all, the first thing we needed to do is to be responsible and open up the Emergency Operations Center very quickly. We're one of the first cities to announce a state of emergency and to enact it, and also to introduce some measures such as, very practical things like changing bylaws to support the restocking of store shelves. A very practical thing to do. Enhancement the movement of goods. But we had to make changes on those bylaws, improve ground transportation. So that was done. We also suspended, as you well know, Brian, the municipal accommodation tax in reference to tourism, the hospitality industry. And one of the things that has been very important to our city is maintaining business services. And I'll tell you why that's very important. Because when there are so many programs introduced by the provincial and federal government, and people sometimes are not aware of the responsibilities of the municipal, provincial, regional, and federal government, we are very close to the people. They tend to call us, and it's been a very important role of our economic development team, as well as Access Vaughan, to direct people to these programs. And I can tell you that both the provincial and the federal government have illustrated great cooperation. And the reports I get from my team here at the City of Vaughan has been that this collaboration has resulted in very positive results. We also canceled the city's 2020 water and water rates. So we were going to increase it by 9%. We spoke about that earlier on. That's also been eliminated, which means that if the city was going at it alone, it would cost $12 million. And we've also waived the late penalties on charges on interim tax bills, which I think alleviates some of the financial stress that people are feeling. Important thing to note, though, is this, that while we're going through this major crisis, governments continue to work. And, whether you're looking at, fire and emergency response, that's happening. Waste collection is happening. Winter maintenance operations is happening. Water and wastewater services continue. And so people can have a lot of confidence in the fact that while we are taking an economic hit, and let's face it, we are, as you just look at the unemployment numbers, they are quite staggering. People can have confidence in the fact that they have governments in place where government is still very active in their lives. I mean, I mentioned some of those services that continue to operate to also give people a sense of peace, sense that we're there for them. And sometimes when we're talking about businesses and we're just looking at measures totally related to businesses, and I think that is your number one priority, we also have to appreciate the fact that these business people have employees, families, and they are people. People that need to access information, people that need these services, and to have a society and a community that is working quite well is reassuring for people that are feeling a lot of stress and anxiety during this period. As well, there was a retweaking of our own. It's sort of, as businesses retool, we in government also retool. And for example, the Vaughan Public Library and our community services, we're providing online services so that people do not miss out on the opportunities that this new normal is providing. I give you an example. I instructed my team that our Canada Day celebration will be the very first virtual Canada Day celebration. And I'll tell you why I did that. Because I want people to remain optimistic, but I also want people to be hopeful, but as well also be realistic. COVID-19 is not about to go away tomorrow or the day after. It's going to take a bit of time. As well, to the business community, I want to thank them for all that they do, but I'm going to tell you something, Brian, is that coming out of this, this is not going to be about sprinters that can go really fast from 0 to 100 meters. This next economy is going to be for marathon runners. Those who are going to build up. It's going to be a gradual build up, and then sustain it for a long time. It's very important for the business community to understand that hope is very important. Being optimistic is very important, but also being realistic is very important. You've got to look at the unemployment numbers. You've got to look at the economic growth numbers, not be frightened by them, but in your planning, you need to bring the future to the present and say, what do I see 5 years, 10 years down the road? And how am I going to retool, reorient my business in a way that I can address this new reality?
So maybe go
ahead.
I was going to say
a broad perspective. I was picking up on also some points made by Minister Tibollo that the psychology of the marketplace. Not too many people are talking about the psychology of the marketplace. That is a very important element in our recovery. How people are feeling, how they're reconnecting, how is the world shifting? Because I can't see. You hear sometimes people say, "Oh, we're going to be out of it for a month or two." Nobody really knows. The only thing I know for sure is that when I examine statistics worldwide, in Europe and other places, I have not seen this. I don't see this ending in a week or two. I see this. It's going to take a bit of time, and I want people to be ready. Look, we've gone through. When you look at world history, we've gone through many challenges. But the psychology of how you respond to those challenges is extremely important. So let us be hopeful, let's be optimistic, but let's also be very realistic of what lies ahead.
No, that's for sure. Now, I want to thank you all for those remarks. Now, I wanted to go right into the Q&A. We had a lot of submissions from chamber members, pre-submitted questions, and others that have come in through social media. So I wanted to go to you first, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
You mentioned the MAT tax, so I want to follow up on that. The tourism and hospitality industries have clearly been among the hardest hit by the COVID-19 pandemic. And the city of Vaughan, you're right, you took action very early on to postpone the MAT hotel tax. And you also deferred late payments on property taxes, which benefited many in the tourism industry and a much broader section of the business community as well. So the question was, is there a plan to continue these measures after May if required?
Absolutely. As the same thing with when we're dealing with the late penalty charges. I mean, you have to adjust, you have to be nimble, you have to be able to pivot. These are different times, and they require a different approach and different measures. I do think, though, that you have to be driven by principles, and first principle is how do we come out from this economic state, and how do we recover? And so you've seen it from the federal and provincial government and the regional and municipal government. We're putting in place tools that will bring about conditions or set up conditions where growth and recovery can occur. So we have to be very smart about how we deal with this. Right now, relief is very important. Like for a municipal government like ours, for example, on the water issue, water fees, to actually absorb a $12 million loss is very, it's hard. It's hard for us, but we understand that type of relief is very important. I mean, when you look at the books of the province, when you look at the books of the federal government, their deficit number and debt numbers, trust me, they understand the impact that debt and deficits have on their economy, but they're willing to invest in people, and they're putting people first. Because right now, as the Prime Minister stated, is not a time to really focus on that. We need to focus on the health and well-being of our people. But I would go farther than that, of our society, because if this is not handled well, chaos could occur that is going to be much more expensive, not just in social, not just in economic terms, but social, cultural, and psychological terms. So this is just basically to say that we will continue to, within our own capacity, to be as helpful as we can to the tourism industry, as you know, as a driver in our community, and to small businesses, large businesses.
No, I would appreciate that. Minister Tibollo, one of the questions we got was the provincial government announced that property taxes will be waived in Northern Ontario. Are there any plans to offer this property tax exemption across the entire province?
Well, as it stands right now, we recognize the fact that Northern Ontario is being hit much harder even than Southern Ontario. So one of the first things that was done was to see what could be done. There are about 63,000 owners of residential and business properties in Northern Ontario. So the idea is to give them that 90-day relief to assist them so that we can try to preserve as many as possible of the small businesses in Northern Ontario. At this point, we're postponing the property tax reassessment that was scheduled to take place in 2020. It'll be moved to 2021. And at this point, from the standpoint of municipal property taxes, the only other thing that we're looking to do is to work with the province on the education component, or work with the municipalities with the education component by delaying the payments to the school boards, the education system. But at this point, there is nothing specifically set, but that doesn't mean that won't change. As was mentioned by the mayor, the concern here is to put people first, and the premier was very clear when he said that he'll spare no cost. We want to make sure that, one, people are safe and are able to resume as normal as possible their lives going forward. And that obviously means that we need to ensure that economic viability continues so that individuals are able to, pick up and be able to feed their families and pay their mortgages and their lease payments. So we will, nothing is off the table at this point. So we will continue working with the federal government and the municipal governments to make sure that we look after as many people as we can.
So actually, let me follow up, because you mentioned the taxes that go to school boards. So you're saying that there is, you are looking at extending that relief, but don't set details yet?
Yeah, what in effect we're doing is we're deferring or allowing the municipalities to defer the payment of the education portion of the municipal taxes, which in effect could give some relief to individuals with respect to tax payments. But there's also the deferral of property taxes that is already taking place by the municipalities in addition to that.
Well, I think that one of the questions we got from a member was, will you continue to defer the municipal remittance of the education property tax to school boards to give the municipalities more flexibility? So it sounds like there's openness to that, but no firm details yet.
Yeah, and again, this is a very fluid situation where we're monitoring very closely the number of positive confirmations now of coronavirus to see the extent of the period of time that we'll be having to live under these extraordinary means. And obviously, we're going to have to be flexible in terms of what we're doing and the programs we're running. So that is an option that still is on the table.
Okay, thank you. So now we're going to go to MP Sorbara. There were a lot of questions that we received about the 75% employee subsidy. So I'm going to stick with you for a couple questions, just so that we can, you did cover it in your opening remarks, just to give people as much clarity as we can. The first question we got was, well, the increase of the emergency wage subsidy to 75% from the 10% is very welcome by the business community. The 6-week waiting period for the program can certainly be too long for many businesses that are trying to survive and keep their employees right now. Are you able to provide any details as to whether this subsidy might be available sooner? Do we still have MP Sorbara?
Right here. Sorry about that, Brian. I just had to unmute it.
Okay.
What I can say specifically is that the government is listening very, very, very adeptly to the concerns of business. Whether I've been on the phone with Dan Kelly and Goldie, Perrin Beatty, a former colleague of the Honorable Mayor's at one time. I've been speaking to all those folks, and they've been speaking to the finance minister's staff. We know and we understand very, very well the cash flow situation facing businesses. We understand very well. We want those employees to start working and back at the shops where they can. So can be very quickly. And I can say that that 6-week period, I think someone put that out there in the media, and I think that was discussed. I think you'll see a lot tighter schedule in that way, in that sense. The one thing I can say very specifically is if you look at what we've delivered so far. So, for example, the GST HST credit that goes to over 15 million people in Canada. We had indicated at the federal government that this would be arriving. It's about $6 billion would be arriving in the month of May. We've actually been able to deliver it today. So we're about 4 weeks early in delivering $6 billion to Canadians, many of them who live here in Woodbridge and in Vaughan, that will be collecting the GST HST credit. So when it comes to the CRA component in delivering the funds to businesses, once that portal opens up, I can definitely commit it's going to be in a much tighter time frame than 6 weeks in those folks receiving the funds. We know time is of the essence here. We know we need to get the help. We want to ensure that businesses come out stronger after this period, and we want to ensure that the recovery, yes, it could be a U-shaped recovery, but we want to ensure. And I will say this, Brian, to all the business owners out there, and to all their employees, the fastest or quickest way that we can come out of this is if we all heed our public health officials in terms of what we know works. Social distancing, wash your hands, practice good hygiene, do the right things. The quicker, the more we do that, the quicker we'll exit from the COVID-19. The quicker the province will designate more and more businesses to be non-essential so we can get them up and running. The quicker the city, which has been expeditious on so many fronts for the citizens of Vaughan, can start getting back to some normality. We can, soon get our community centers up. We want to get that normality back. The new normal will be slightly different. But I do have a plea to all the business owners and their employees. Let's ensure we practice that social distancing. Let's ensure we do smart things so we can get all those restaurants and coffee shops and everything we love about our city of Vaughan, the Courtright Center, golf, everything, Wonderland, everything, you name it. Our societal norms depend on us being able to interact with individuals. So the faster we can do that, the better off we will be.
Well, listen, there's no question that's an important plea, and I do absolutely social distancing is the key to flatten this curve sooner. But I want to go back on the employee wage subsidy because this is a question that business community is asking about. So, can you outline the specific process for the subsidy? How does a business qualify? When will the portal be open? What are the criteria?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So the business will be open to all businesses, big and small. There's no cap on the number of employees that a business may have. It's open to corporations, sole proprietorships, nonprofits. There are many nonprofits we have here in Woodbridge. The way it'll work is it'll be up to a maximum of $847 per week per employee, which is a 75% of the maximum allowable remuneration that we have. So that's the aspect. No size, no big or small. Encompasses almost every type of business there is in Canada. The original 10% wage subsidy only had CCPCs in it. The reference periods will be March, April, June. We've made them more robust from my understanding this morning from what's being reported in the media. I actually spoke to one owner, I don't want to say the name, but a very well-known company. He said, well, Francesco, March wasn't that bad for us. So my sales were only down 20%. And now with this morning's, what I hear, see the commentary, and that is the draft legislation, this business now qualifies because we've reduced the March year-over-year comparison to 15%. So we are incorporating and capturing a lot of thousands of business. It's a $71 billion program. So we need this message spread across the Vaughan Chamber site, the other sites that people can go to as well. That information has to be out there. In terms of eligibility, it's going to be very broad, and it's going to be easy. CRA makes things easy for Canadians, easy and efficient. And we know people are going in businesses are going through financial hardship. So our goal is to get the money out the door to businesses and individuals as quickly as possible so they can sustain their livelihood and get back on their feet, pay for what they need to pay for, and then we come out of it by hitting the public health officials. Do
you know when the portal will be open?
I don't know specifically because the legislation should be brought to Parliament today, but what I can say via the experience of the Canada Emergency Response Benefit, that the portal is being worked on right now.
So, okay, thank you. And the last question on this, this is a good opportunity for you to tell our viewers at home what other support options businesses can use for the federal government in the short term, in the event it still does take 5 or 6 weeks to get the payments.
Well, in that event, in that hypothetical event, I'm not going to address that in the sense that I believe it's going to be sooner than 6 weeks.
But for instance, you could talk about the BDC funding, right? Like the funding.
Yes, absolutely. So near term, the BDC funding, the $40,000 loan from the Canada Emergency Business Account, that if you go to Scotia or RBC, TD's, any of the bank's website, credit unions as well, IC Savings, for example, those funds are going to be literally divvied out potentially by early next week once applications begin to be received. Each of the banks and financial institutions have the application process. They've gone through the details. Payroll between $50,000 to $1 million. You got to be an employer. It encaptures lots. Again, 0%, no interest, no principal repayment. You repay $30,000 by the end of 2022. $10,000 is forgiven. It is a perfect program for that small business, especially here in Vaughan, where you want to cover a month or two of rent, your utilities, and you'll be able to do that. Repay $30,000 of it, and $10,000 will go to those expenses, which are forgivable. So it's a great way to get quick cash flow into those small businesses that we know and we love here and so much enjoy here in the city of Vaughan.
Okay, I appreciate that response because that is personally that is the question that the majority of members have directed at me. To my team, I want to move to the other question that's being directed to us. And let's start with Minister Tibollo. It's about rent, right? You're all hearing this. The top issues that we're hearing besides social distancing, it is about how do I access the subsidy and keep my people employed? I have problems with liquidity, and then this issue of rent, which relates to the liquidity issue. So are there any plans for your government to legislate a rent deferral program to ensure that businesses are not evicted? And then we'll go around and let's just let everybody get a chance on this question because we've received this a lot from our members.
Yeah, and that's something that I'm receiving a lot of calls on it. I'm sure both the mayor and Francesco as well as are receiving calls. It's a difficult situation. There's over 1,300,000 leases in the province of Ontario. We started doing a calculation, and it's when we got to $50 billion, we kind of decided that it was something that was to be virtually impossible to do from the standpoint of a provincial, the province being able to do something to subsidize or to help with that. What we've done is we've asked landlords to be reasonable. We've asked banks to be reasonable. And we were trying to accommodate or have the landlords accommodate as many tenants as possible. Realistically, it's not the best plan that can be laid, but the costs associated with the leases and the tenancies is substantial from the standpoint of a province being able to provide relief. One of the things the federal government's done a great job from the standpoint of supports, from the standpoint of the loan, as was mentioned. But at this point, all the options are on the table. We're still trying to measure and see what the outcome is going to be, the length of time before we start seeing the curve flatten. So there's things that potentially could still be done, but at this point, there is no plan to subsidize or do anything with respect to the rents from the provincial standpoint.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, did you want to chime in on that?
Yes, and I think that the minister correctly points out the incredible cost of a program, a universal program, that would cost. I think it was a $50 billion. That was a number that I heard. You could imagine if it puts financial pressure on the federal and provincial government, you could imagine the type of pressure it would bring to us, who have obviously fewer financial resources for a program. But let's be a little bit optimistic here. Small business people, large as well, large corporations, they understand market forces. And I've had a number of conversations with large landlords in the city of Vaughan that understand that it's very important to keep tenants. And they're in many ways mirroring some of the activities of the provincial and federal government, municipal government, by giving some relief. So in other words, last night I was having a conversation with a landlord who said to me, we're going to defer for 90 days and if need be, maybe 120. So the point I'm making is this, right? That to set an expectation that the municipal government can afford to subsidize or underwrite these kinds of rents, I mean, it's not an expectation that we honestly can meet. And I like to be very honest and open and transparent and accountable to the people I serve. So that's not an issue. Where I am a little bit helpful is that I contact actually these landlords and speak about the importance of keeping the businesses open. And of course, they know that already. The conversation goes like this. We're going through a difficult time that we all have to chip in. We've seen the actions of governments, but it's also business responsibility to help each other out. And I've been quite pleased by the rational, thoughtful reaction of some of these businesses who themselves are also facing economic challenges. But conversations like the ones I've had last night speak to the fact that here in the city of Vaughan, we have enlightened corporate leadership that understands that at the end of the day, it's also in their interest to help out these small businesses who may not be able to afford rent. So that's where I'm at on this particular issue. I wish I could tell you that we can help out with the rent. It's a very challenging issue, but I do think that market forces will also dictate that, in fact, businesses understand that it's also in their personal interest to have businesses in their buildings as opposed to having empty spaces. because then it would take them a lot longer. And it has there's a cascading effect, as you know, in business, right? One business, two business, three businesses close. That type of economic activity is reduced. Goods and services are not being supplied. The federal, provincial, municipal governments aren't collecting taxes anymore from these businesses. I mean, this is very basic economic, but it's very important sometimes when you're facing a crisis to go back to some very basic fundamental economic principles, right? Of supply and demand, of the ability for businesses to be nimble. Like, look at some businesses that were producing alcohol that are now creating hand sanitizers, or some people that have retooled to now create masks. And, you know, you have examples worldwide where, you know, a place like, you know, even automakers are now involved in ventilators creation. So I do think that these are the market dynamics. Is it normal? No. Was it an externality that we should have been ready for? Well, you know, virus and pandemics like this are not something that are exactly new in our lexicon. We've been talking about this, and we can look at even people like Bill Gates, who have contributed a great deal to this this period of time and knowledge and wisdom. These are things that we should know that they eventually do occur. We're not exempt from human history. And this is what I like about the lesson. That now, and you've seen both the Prime Minister and the Premier beginning to realize that when it comes to healthcare, when it comes to medical supplies, that we have to become self-sufficient.
Absolutely.
That's a valuable lesson.
Yep.
And so let's, if it's okay, just because I appreciate it, there's a lot of questions we want to get through. So, MP Sorbara, I'm going to put that to you and also ask you a follow-up question. Just
sure.
If I understood correctly, did you were referring, you know, the 30% drop in revenue for the employees? Yes. Were you saying there's going to be potential change in that allowance?
So first off, on the rent, I want to echo the mayor's comments about some of the landlords. Every conversation I've had with landlords here in Vaughan and actually across the GTA, I've seen landlords step up time after time with rent deferrals, whether it's 30 days to 120 days. You know, here in the riding that Michael and I, the minister and I represent, we have a number of banquet halls, and that's part of the hospitality industry that we know has been very, very hard hit and will take time to get back. And I know those landlords with those banquet hall operators are working together to ensure they come out of this and ensure that they're able to serve their clients. I know my daughter was going to have her communion on May 24th, and unfortunately the communion is canceled, and now and we've had to rearrange our plans of when the family will get together. Again, just an indication of how that impacts the economy. And in terms of the rent, remember, we have worked with the banks. Almost 1 million Canadians, I believe the number is up to, have gone to the banks to get their mortgages deferred. Obviously, commercial businesses will be working with their financial institutions in terms of what arrangements they need to make. The banks are very open to this. There's basically a 24-hour line between the finance minister's office and the banks. And it's one of those things that we really, really need to work together. On the cash flow issue for the banks, again, the Canada Emergency Bank business accounts going to provide a lot of relief. Contracts are written right now between landlords and their tenants, and those are. Also, the Insurance Bureau of Canada has come out with indications that this is not what's called a force majeure issue. This is not an issue where there is compensation versus insurance contracts. I will highlight, though, there was a court case decision on April 1st by the Ontario Court of Superior Justice, I believe, with regards to this. I encourage, that's a deeper conversation, go to your lawyers and so forth. I think. On to your second question, Brian, as indicated in the press, as indicated in Globe Mail, and I know Dan Kelly's come out with some comments this morning, which I just read before I hopped on. One of the issues that a lot of MPs raised, which I also flagged for the minister during our daily calls every day at 5:30, we have a call with all the Liberal MPs to go over the issues we're facing, was the comparability periods or the reference periods that businesses would use. And we knew a lot of businesses actually had a decent month of March in the first 2 weeks. And again, that goes to the nature of the beast we're dealing with the pandemic, where you've gone from 1 week where everything's okay, and 10 days later, you're in a completely new world in a different environment. And we've seen that with businesses where revenues were good on March 1st, and with one business doing $150,000 a week, and then by March 20th, you're virtually at a standstill. So that comparability period, I know I haven't seen the legislation, but from indications that what I've read, that comparability period has been greatly strengthened to allow many, many, many more businesses to not only have April and May, so you'll get April easily captured, May easily captured, but you'll also be able to capture March in terms of being able to provide employees that 75% wage subsidy and also cover a big portion of your costs during the month of March. And that's that liquidity factor again. That's that cash flow factor. Okay?
Thank you. I appreciate it.
So, Brian, if I could just jump in. Francesco made a very good point. The case that was decided on April 1st looked at the definition of business interruption insurance. So anyone that's listening should have their lawyer look at the case and should have the lawyer interpret the clause in the insurance contract to see if, in fact, they're covered by it, because that could be a huge benefit, obviously, to a business to be able to utilize the insurance that they pay for to cover and help defer some of the expenses for staying open. So it's an important point that Francesco made, and hopefully people got the message to look into it, because it will, and it has been interpreted, and I know that it's being supported by the couple of insurance companies in Vaughan that have been told that they have to send adjusters out and that they will be paying out on the policy, but it's a question of interpretation of business interruption. So please make sure that if you look in to see whether you qualify as a business.
Well, no, I appreciate that. We have certainly heard a lot about insurance as well for business struggling. I wanted to put this question out to all three of you. You don't have to all answer. Let's see who wants it. It's just about for-profit sports leagues, sports organizations, summer camps. I'm thinking about them. We're hearing from them amongst our membership. Some of them will struggle to survive because they may have people are asking for refunds right now. They'll have no enrollment. They may not be able to go forward this summer. Are there any programs put in place to help these businesses that are more seasonal in nature? Who wants to take that one?
So maybe I could just lead off on that, because I'm familiar with one particular case in Vaughan that's certainly concerning to me and to all of us in the city of Vaughan. The situation with that, we did a roundtable, and we're going to be doing a specific roundtable focused on what we can do with the sports facilities and what the minister can do specifically to support them. Now, I was the minister responsible for tourism, culture, and sport, and that is a huge contributor to the overall economy of a lot of the municipalities. So we're familiar with the issue. We're looking as to what can be done, and I am sure that there'll be some relief that will be available from the province. That's something, again, that we're looking to see. Our priority right now has and will continue to be to make sure that we've got the supplies we need, the people we need, and the locations to take care of anyone that gets sick. But it's on the radar, and we are looking at what we can do to assist these organizations that provide an incredible service and will get the lives of our citizens back to normalcy once they open up by having the leagues restart and move forward.
Yeah, and Brian, if I can jump in on this, because there's actually a much larger issue than just the seasonality of sports league. The Canadian economy and the agri-food sector here in Canada, and for many of us, the agri-food sector here in York Region in Vaughan is a very large employer, from mushrooms to Mike and Mike's Organics. So the seasonality of those businesses and ensuring they have a labor supply. Many of the workers that come to Canada from places such as Mexico and other areas come here to be, seasonal. It's a seasonal workforce and an agricultural labor force. So we have undertaken a number of initiatives to ensure that these individuals still can come to Canada. We have the Minister of Immigration. We have the Minister Carla Kaltroff as well, and her folks that have put up directives to ensure that we have these folks coming to Canada because we need them, and the businesses and actually in Vaughan in York Region need them. We need to ensure agri-food sector is large, and there's a large number of agri-food sector processors here in York Region in the city of Vaughan that I can speak to. That I've discussed this several times. I'm on the phone with them almost every day, it seems. With regards to the seasonality of certain businesses, for example, golf courses here in the city of Vaughan, a lot of students will be employed there during the summertime, Wonderland. And these are programs that I know and sectors that I know our minister, I was on the phone with Minister Duclos the other day, specifically talking about how we retool or we relook at the Canada Summer Jobs Program to make sure these businesses can try to tap into that. So once they get going again, they have the resources, and we can help them cover some of the costs of re-employing students. That's just it's a big issue. It's a large issue. We're very aware of it, keenly aware of it, and I think it's just a continuum. It's a continuum of how we're rolling out the programs, how we're addressing the needs of Canadians. First thing is we want to make sure the mom and dad at home that have been laid off get funds for them to cover their bills, to put food on the table, cover any medicines they need, take care of their children. So as the mayor said, so rightly so, that their mental health and their well-being is taken care of in the interim until they get their livelihoods taken together. These other issues, as important, will be dealt with as we continue along. The sports leagues involved, we know the strength of the hockey league, and the mayor's been on that for so many years, and the soccer league, and the mayor, again, the mayor's participated and supported that for so long. We know the city of Vaughan is going to step up to the plate, which they're doing. We know the province, as indicated by Michael, is going to step up what we're doing. And we know the federal government in our capacity will also step up to do what we can do. And just if I can just add one more thing, and the mayor so rightly highlighted this, our healthcare sector, our nurses and doctors, I know, I think that if this has highlighted how important it is to have pan-Canadian leadership on the healthcare sector, and that we have our own supply chain when it comes to medical supplies here in Canada, where we have the resources to do that. Coming out of this, that is one lesson and one Harvard business case study that we'll be looking at day in, day out to ensure that the systems are in place.
Now, let me, just because we're a little bit short on time, Mr. Mayor, I wanted to ask you a specific question. It's come in different ways from numerous people through different social media. So I'll read you a couple examples so you get the feel for it. So one member wrote, Honorable Mayor and MPs, I would like to request sanitizing the whole city for people in the community. Hope my voice is heard. But then you have another question, which is based on York Region Media Group putting out a report, says, it has been noted that York Region has been identified as a hotspot for Ontario. What are we doing as a city located within the region to promote social isolation? I know you have covered this earlier, but I think it's worth it because we've seen this a few times. I thought I'd put that question to you.
Well, I think it's very important. As you know, I like to go directly to the people. I use obviously social media as well, but I also do calls throughout the city, and I can tell you 50,000 people picked up. To promote common sense, social distancing, making sure that we address the issue of cleanliness, hand sanitizers, and use common sense. I think, Brian, that there's a lot of information out there that if people would take the time, and the vast majority of people know what to do. Like I've seen a total shift, for example, in the way people shop in our city, the way they move around, the way they maintain distancing. There's always going to be, and there are always going to be, individuals who have not either heard the message or don't want to hear the message. I've had cases where you have a person that had just traveled, come back and go to a supermarket, to the grocery store, and walks through the door. But now how has that changed? Well, these shopping centers, what they're now asking, they're actually asking people, have you traveled? Now, you would think that given all the information that is out there, given the fact that these individuals had to go through the airport, that they would know these very basic things. The reality is we have to continue to communicate. In reference to some of the trends outside of North America in the sense of sanitizing in roads, we're actually looking at that. We're looking at that very seriously, and if need be, that's where we're going to go. So I just want to make sure that people understand that ultimately we will do whatever it is in our power and whatever our resources allow us to do to get out of this COVID-19 crisis. I do just want to say very briefly echo some of the comments made about sports groups. You are definitely not forgotten. You are very much in our mind, but the rollout of programs right now, as you probably have noticed provincially and federally, has been to focus on the health of individuals, right? And I'm talking about immediate health concerns. And then I think you will see programs that will address some of the issues that sports organizations have cited to you and others.
Thank you. Okay, so what we're going to do, just in the interest of time, I have one question for our federal and provincial counterparts, whoever wants it. Then I'm going to give you one wrap-up question to try and end us on a positive note for all of you, and we're going to wrap. So for MP Sorbara or Minister Tibollo, look, the reality is, as a leader of a big chamber of commerce, we recognize and we want essential services to stay open. And we recognize the important element of that. But I'm also a voice for the community, much like the mayor says he is as well. So I wanted to read you a sampling of one comment I got and just get your advice or feedback. So this person says, the government is great to offer subsidy to keep people employed. Why would anyone want to work in factories as the media states stay home? Employees come daily to inform us that they are worried and want to stay home as requested. These are two different messages. Everyone stay home, and manufacturers with sales decrease 30% plus receive subsidies of 75% to keep employees working. Employees do not want to come to work after hearing the stay home message. So you see that inherent conflict. We have heard that from some. I recognize the importance of keeping essential services open, but I wanted to hear your advice on this for either of you.
Well, just basically, if I can, I'll keep it very short so Francesco can jump in as well. From our standpoint, we recognize the need to keep businesses open. There is a bit of an issue that comes up, as you have mentioned, about someone saying, well, I can get paid to stay at home. Why would I go to work? What we have found in a lot of the work that we've done, the research, the conversations that we've had, people recognize the importance of their job and their work. And while a lot of them may be afraid, we're doing everything we can to ensure that through the labor laws that we have, that we keep sites and we keep places as safe as possible. At the end of the day, though, we can't force someone to work if they don't feel safe. But we recognize, and it's a very delicate balancing that we're trying to do, where we try to keep the essential services and the supply chain open as much as possible, because we need these services and these supplies in order to try to keep us as normalized as possible till we get over it. But I recognize the inherent contradiction, but we're relying on people's good judgment that if they're up to it and capable, that they go to work and continue doing the great jobs that they're doing in whatever facet of our economy.
Not to elongate the answer from Michael, I agree with everything he's commented there. And the only thing I can add is, we have received a number of calls from people asking, can they collect the Canada Emergency Response Benefit if they don't feel that it's safe for them to go to work? The direct answer is no. The Canada Emergency Response Benefit was implemented to assist those individuals that have been impacted directly by COVID-19 and have lost their income and livelihood temporarily, of course, and then onto the EI system afterwards. What I would say to those individuals out there who are going to work, thank you. Thank you to the grocery clerks. Thank you to the frontline workers. I know the city of Vaughan revised the transit times that people can bring. The trucks can go to grocery stores and so forth. That was a huge thing, and that was so important for the city of Vaughan to do, and I applaud them for doing it. And I just want to say thank you to the folks. So when I go to Longo's or Nature's or Fortino's or No Frills, and I see them working day in, day out, just to say thank you. We have your back. We want to ensure you're in a safe environment. All the grocery stores have put plexiglass in, manufacturers that are still operating, whether it's for aircraft components here in the city of Vaughan or furniture or et cetera, they put their proper social distancing in place. Because we all know coming out of this, like the mayor referred to, we're going to still be dealing with this. Until a vaccine is developed, we will still be dealing with COVID-19 on a different level. So we are going to have to return to a normal. And I also want to applaud all the construction workers still working on the residential high-rises to make sure people have a place to move into in the coming months, and all those critical infrastructure projects, including the Vaughan Hospital that continues to be worked on. But obviously safely and practicing the social distancing, ensuring they have proper hand basins and wash basins so that they can clean themselves before they go home to their loved ones.
Thank you. That's an important message. So, I'm going to give you each an opportunity to wrap up for a couple minutes, but I'll give you a question to think about that you can answer as part of that. So, this one actually came from Frank Fazzari, who's a big member of the Vaughan Chamber, and we did our first business webinar with him last Friday on supports on accounting and financial. And I was talking to him last night, and he said, "Why don't you ask them this question?" I think it's a great positive way to end our chat from a unified standpoint. He says, based on what we're seeing today, how do you think your level of government is going to change in the future, perhaps for the better? So maybe you can think about that as you give your concluding remarks. Why don't we start with the mayor, since it's your turn?
Well, we've always used a people first approach, and I think that the fact that the city of Vaughan has invested a lot of time in emergency preparedness really is an illustration of the fact that we do take these externalities very, very seriously. For us, by having a principle-driven governance approach that puts people first, we were ready for COVID-19. I do think that coming out of this, what has been strengthened has been the partnership between all levels of government, and that is good news. That is good news for the people that we represent. I personally, my conversations with the Prime Minister, with the Premier, and Christopher Freeland. I just see a real determination by the levels of government to really put people first, which is very consistent with our approach here in the city of Vaughan. I'm always very clear about this. We have clarity of values, principles, and beliefs in the city of Vaughan. We know exactly why we exist as a government, and we perfectly align our actions to those values, principles, and beliefs. And once you do that, you get the type of results that we've been able to get as a government, even during this crisis. But it's interesting that Frank asked this question, Fazzari, because here is this individual who has really embraced this crisis and has done something about it. And he has promoted the meeting of the minds through these webinars. And that's been very helpful because I think that the way we react to a crisis, to an adversity, is really a statement about the character of the people. Obviously, governments tend to mirror the character and the integrity of the people they represent. We are a reflection of the citizens. And when we, as a local government, reflect the citizens, what you see, Brian, is that, the spirit of generosity comes up. People are in it together. There's great harmony between all levels of government and members that represent the city of Vaughan, both at the federal and provincial level, and that is ingrained in our DNA. And for that, I'm very, very grateful to the citizens, and our citizens make us better representatives because look at the questions, look at the fact how engaged they are. In all different facets. Look how people are standing there shoulder to shoulder together to face this on. And that gives us, Michael and Francesco and others that represent this area, this is the oxygen that public service requires. It's that continuous support from the people that we represent. We spoke about earlier about, how people are donating masks, or people are calling and asking what they can do. I know that my colleagues receive the same emails. They say, what can we do? What can we do as individual citizens to help that? And that to me is sort of the selfless love, compassion, and understanding that is very much part of who we are as people. What this COVID-19 crisis has done for our city and for our province and for our country has been really the clear definition and a very defining moment for people to know who Canadians are, who Ontarians are, and who are the citizens of Vaughan. We have great values, and I think that it gives me a lot of hope for the future. I am, as I said earlier on, I want people to be very realistic. I want them to be hopeful and optimistic, but I want them to be realistic. This is a marathon. This is not for sprinters. This is a marathon. And I hope that people take that message, because in order to, in business, to get through this period, you have to have a long-term view of how you're going to redefine your business activities.
Yep, absolutely. Yep. MP Sorbara.
Thank you, Brian, and obviously like to personally thank Frank Fazzari and the whole team of Fazzari and Partners. Since day one, they've been asking very pertinent questions to myself and with regards to what CRA and the Department of Finance would be looking at, and they've also had a number of suggestions, and I want to thank them for that feedback. It's always great and such a pillar in our community. One thing I have to say is, we reference this whole of government approach. And to many, what does this esoteric term mean? And I think it's come home for many of us, whether it's at the provincial level, the municipal, and the whole of government approach means all levels of government working together, not only within one level of government, but all levels of government working together. I know the relationship that's been developed between the Premier and the Deputy Prime Minister just indicates, the time we're in and how Canadians have stepped up, no matter what they do, no matter what their level of position in society is. It means that we're all working together, and it's so important. So I think, coming out of this, obviously, we're gonna, on a positive, we're gonna know what's worked in terms of the supports that are in place for Canadians from coast to coast to coast. We know that, personally, that the CRA is delivering for Canadians, and I got to give the shout out to all those. I'm not even going to refer to them as bureaucrats, but all those departmental officials, all those employees that work for ESDC and CRA and finance out there, just churning, working tireless hours to ensure those benefits get to Canadians. We're going to know those positive stories from coast to coast of Canadian companies stepping up, Canadian individuals stepping up, and just us applauding our frontline workers. And I think that's the spirit that we're going to come out with. In a number of our social media posts, I've always said, we're in this together, and as we work together, we're going to emerge stronger out of this. And I fundamentally believe that. The mayor refers to the spirit of generosity. I think of it in the same terms. I just say, we are going to come out of this stronger. We're going to come out of it stronger as a city, as a region, as a province, and as a country. I have no question there. I think our response has been, very, very solid. Obviously, this has been a learning situation for many countries around the world. If you look at globally, in terms of what's happened, how Europe's handled it, how Asia's handled it. And I think the one thing that we're going to come out of this is we know our supply chains are going to need to be fortified and strengthened. And we know we're going to depend on Canadian companies for Canadian solutions. But we also know we need to act and think even more globally than ever, that the world is a very interconnected place. And borders, yes, they count, but we know the world is very interconnected, and we're going to have to continue to raise Canada's image abroad, continue to work with all our partners globally to ensure the solutions are in place. The mayor's referred to the marathon. I agree. I agree. And even to add on that is we need to make sure our trade routes, our investment routes, many of the Vaughan Chamber's clients from CN to others depend on trade routes opening and reopening, and we need to ensure those get reopened very quickly.
Very true.
Thank you, Brian. For all the listeners out there, we're continually posting stuff on social media, our communication lines. Direct message me if you need to. I'll get back to you. Last night it was 11:30. I got back to one of my stakeholders in Vaughan. Any time of the day, please let us know. We're here to assist you. At this time, government is here and we're responding, and we're doing what it needs to be done to support our businesses and our workers. Thanks, Brian.
Thank you. Minister Tibollo?
Thank you, Brian. And I couldn't agree more with both the mayor and with Francesco with respect to this being a marathon and to prepare yourself and pace yourself going forward. I also agree with all the other comments that were made in terms of where we stand and our resiliency. When I reflect on where we are and what we're doing, what I'm seeing is that collaboration, that spirit of collaboration between all levels of government to look to do what's in the best interests of the people of the province of Ontario, the city of Vaughan, Canada as well. And one of the things that I have to say is the transparency that is kind of almost the hallmark of what all levels of government are doing, is to try to keep the citizens informed as to where we are, what we can do, what we are looking toward having to do, I think it's really important because it's keeping our people, our constituents safe, informed, and able to make their own decisions in terms of where they stand with things. I have to, for me, resiliency is a key component to the work that I do, wanting to ensure that people are healthy mentally, because at the end of the day, we may be able to bend the curve of the COVID-19. I'm concerned about what the curve is going to look like for recovery, for mental health issues, and how we're going to, work forward, to ensure that people are healthy mentally and physically. To me, the governments are in partnership now, and you can see that collaboration between municipal, federal, and provincial. We're also in partnerships with a lot of companies that are throughout Canada and in Ontario, and of course the ones in Vaughan Woodbridge. This is something that hopefully, if there's going to be a change or if there's something we learn, is that working together we can build a much stronger economy. And again, supply management, especially when it comes to healthcare and the needs of the province of Ontario and of Canada, that Ontario was the economic engine of the province of the country. We want to make sure that we can continue building it to make sure that in the future we're all working and able to trade between the various provinces in the very things that are necessary to ensure that our health and safety is always going to be there. So, I echo the comments made by both the mayor and Francesco that, we're in this together. We've got to stay safe. We've got to continue working hard. We've got to continue supporting the first responders and all the frontline people, from the grocery store clerks to the, to the people that are picking up the garbage and doing all the different things that allows us to maintain as much normalcy as possible. And we will eventually be able to start opening up those essential services again once we get the COVID-19 under control. So I, wish everybody to stay safe, to continue doing what they're doing, and to continue telling people the message that we've been saying all along. Stay home, keep your hands clean. We will beat the coronavirus.
I want to thank you all sincerely. It's, as I said from the outside, it's a tremendously difficult time for so many. We appreciate the unity that the various levels of government have shown together. So, Mr. Mayor, Maurizio Bevilacqua, Minister Tibollo, and MP Sorbara, thank you very much. And I know we'll continue to be in touch and filter questions from our members to you. As I said at the beginning, you can go on the Vaughan Chamber's website, and go into the business resources page. All the business supports from government are all there in real time to help our members continue to communicate with us. We will filter those concerns to the appropriate level of government. We are continuing the business resource webinars. As I mentioned, we did one last week on accounting. We have other ones coming up. Watch our website. I would recommend you join our mailing list. It's free, just so that you can see what webinars and series are coming up. And in fact, next week, we will be doing another town hall for King Vaughan with Minister Lecce, Minister Schultz, and again, Maurizio Bevilacqua, Mayor of Vaughan. So thank you again to all of you. And you had some very positive messages. And I hope we will emerge stronger, hopefully sooner than later.
Amen.
Thank you, Brian. And thanks, everyone.